Hello there, welcome to Wonderful Disasters. This is a new series I'm doing alongside other reviews I'll do as well. But this one actually looks at films that have basically been received badly on release, either commercially or critically, or usually both. Now some of these films have been better received as years have gone by, and some of them are now thought as classics. Other ones are still viewed as disasters or very flawed films. The idea of the series is to celebrate films that were initially viewed as failures, and actually look at why they were viewed as failures at the time and why they were of interest. I'm also eventually going to look at films that are actual disasters that still have some interesting things about them, but films you can't defend as good. But I'm going to celebrate the flawed films, because a lot of films I think have nowadays it seems to be a case of you're great or you're a disaster, and there's no in between, and I think that's horrible. I mean, basically most films are very flawed. Even films that are viewed as great are flawed. So this series celebrates the flaws. Now the first film we're talking about is The Thing, the John Carpenter's The Thing. Now this film was released in 1982, and it was, at the time, it was a complete disaster. I mean, it was viewed as like an obscenity. Really, the reviews were horrible. It was a box office disaster. John Carpenter had a hard time afterwards getting a gig, so he followed us with Christine, which was a film that didn't quite work either, like commercially. But it wasn't as good as The Thing. It wasn't the same league as The Thing. But eventually, he found his footing again. This one was like one of his best films, one of his great films, and it was misunderstood on release. Now that's actually an infamous case of a film being too new for the audience. I mean, another film I'm going to look at later, which is Blade Runner, was released at the same time, had the same problem. Basically, these were films that were made by directors who were influenced by the 70s and were making dark films, and at that point the audience has moved on to more comic booky sensibilities where the heroes win, and where they wanted linear plots, and they wanted the plotting to actually be optimistic and tight and have a pace to it. And these films were much more straggly, and they were more about atmosphere and character, and they'd like to mess with you. So a lot of films at this time were massive bombs, and a lot of the directors like Paul Schrader, John Carpenter, you know, people like that who were interesting directors who were a bit anti-establishment, they kind of get knocked off the studio lots at this point, and they never really get back on. But they still had good careers afterwards, but they were too weird for the mainstream. So John Carpenter's The Thing was the moment where everything changed for his career, but it's a beautiful film. Now when I first saw this film, it was a weird experience for me, because I was not expecting, I think like most audiences at the time, I saw it in video, but I still wasn't quite sure. I was still kind of used to the kind of more commercial, more Star Wars based idea where you actually had ABC plotting and things moved fast. This was completely different. This is one of the first introductions to me for the joys of ambiguity in film, and just a sense of atmosphere and dread that there's no escape from. I mean, I think one of the reasons it was made was because Alien was a big hit and I was looking for another Alien type film, but this is very different from Alien in lots of ways. Thought it was a rip-off of Alien to start with when it was first released, but because it was based, the idea was a monster movie, working class cast, an environment which was cut off from the rest of the world. But Alien was out in space, this was Antarctica. So everyone thought, oh, this is a rip-off. It's not, it's very different. It's two films in the same genre basically, but they viewed it as a rip-off. But this one was actually, Alien was kind of obvious. Alien was a body count picture. After the first hour, where you don't quite know where it's going to go, where the pacing's a bit off, a bit weird, but interesting. It's always going towards these images where you were expecting like the Geiger stuff, and then the chest buster, stuff like that. Alien had a good first hour where you didn't really know where the film was going, and then it became a body count picture with a really good monster. So I mean, it was different enough so that it was unusual, and it had a shock to the new, but the story itself was similar enough to what people kind of understood, so it had a straightforward effectiveness despite the weirdness. The Thing didn't. The Thing embraced the darker elements of the story, and embraced elements that were non-commercial. The Thing embraced the fact that apparently heroes weren't sympathetic. They were working class people. They could be mean. They didn't get on with each other. They were isolated from the world, but they were also kind of isolated generally. There were people who go to somewhere like Antarctica to work. A lot of them aren't going to be the most social people in the first place, and this film embraces that. They're grumbly, and your hero, played by Kurt Russell, was even more grumbly because he can't even get on with these people, and these are the kind of isolated group to start with, and even then he has to go outside to their hut to get away from them because he's the helicopter pilot. He doesn't want to deal with them. So that's the kind of character you're dealing with. So where Alien had like working class stiffs, they were still kind of normal. These people, the Thing had isolated characters who were hard to sympathise with, which made it actually better and rewatching because it's really interesting. It always keeps you on edge and always keeps you fascinated by how this film works. But the first viewing of it, it's a bit weird. I mean, when I first saw the Thing, I was really confused by it. I thought it was really creepy, but I wasn't quite sure I liked it or not until I started to embrace what it was. I think because it was something new, I just wasn't quite sure how to contextualise it because I hadn't seen anything quite like that film. And it was the first introduction to the kind of films I really like. But this was the first one, and you're like, what is this? Because there's a monster, but the monster's a shape changer. And the basic plot is this shape changer comes on an alien ship, is thawed out, and starts to imitate the people who found it, and they don't know who's human, who's not, and have to try and destroy the Thing before it escapes to civilization, because once it gets there, it'll take over civilization. So basically they have to save the world. But that would be the plot of a normal film. That's the motivation for them. But they're so dysfunctional, the actual feeling of the film is hopelessness. Instantly it's hopeless even before the Thing shows up. And then when the Thing shows up, it becomes this bloody mess of these characters, and the reactions are just a bit off. You're not quite sure who's the Thing, who's not. We're not quite sure who's normal and who's not normal in the first place as well. So it creates this thing you're never quite sure. You're never quite on a level with any character before the Thing shows up. So even when it shows up and the special effects can start to happen, you're always off balance because you never get a chance to get that balance you'd normally get in a normal film. Because the atmosphere is just so cold. The surroundings are so cold. The interactions are abrasive. And you're not quite sure what the monster is. You're just looking for the monster and try to find a foothold of what you should be scared of. And it's actually the fear that The Shining has as well. The Shining is another film from that period that has taken off and has been a real iconic horror film. And I think one thing that this and The Thing share is the idea of, you're scared of something, but you can't quite place what it is. It's like, that The Shining is the ghost of the haunted hotel, and with The Thing, it's the monster of the Thing, and you try to kill it. That's set up, but the atmosphere of the scare isn't so pinpointed to like, it's this scare, this scare, this scare. It's the atmosphere of the scare. And this is the first film that feels influenced by David Cronenberg, like really influenced. I mean, Alien felt influenced by him in The Monster and some of the atmosphere, but it felt more influenced by like B-movies. For the rest of it, it felt like a genre movie mixed with a Cronenbergian idea. Cronenberg came first. Cronenberg was out since the late 60s. A lot of these ideas people could have seen. It's like he was, and William Burroughs out been before that, so there was these ideas were going to float through for a while before Hollywood got hold of them. But this is the first film that's not just influenced by the ideas, but influenced by the atmosphere of something like Shivers or The Brood. This film feels very influenced by The Brood. Because again, it's an off-balance people in the cold, and there's no real hope. So it's this wonderful atmosphere, and what's great is as the film goes on, it gets more and more helpless. And each set piece is beautifully done, and they hold up now because, yes, some of the effects might not look as great as they could have been, but they've got an old school feel to them. They're pure within the actual atmosphere they're in. So you go along with that's part of the world of these effects. These old style effects are part of this world. The way that every old film eventually has a style that you can jump into. You know it's not modern, but you can jump into the atmosphere of it. And it's so imaginative what they're doing, what they're trying to do, that it feels perfect for what the techniques they're using. That you couldn't really do this with CG. Horror and CG don't really work. CG just looks too fake in a horror movie anyway. And the reality, the physical reality, and these old school effects really deliver the nightmare feeling, because nightmares are claustrophobic, and there's not much logic to them. And this film has the feeling of a nightmare of things are happening, you're trying to deal with it, but you can't quite place how to deal with it. So whatever reaction you've got is going to be insubstantial. And that's what floats through the film, is everything they do will not work. And everything they do has flaws to it. The way human beings work in real life, where you've got a plan, but there's going to be flaws to the plan, and you have to try and make do. This film really delivers that same thing, but also has a nightmare logic of this monster that always changes shape to, and whenever it gets confronted, it always looks different, always feels different, and there's nothing to grab onto. And when I first saw the film, that was the thing that really, I think the thing that creeped me out, but the thing that made me go, oh, I'm not sure I like this, because it's to grab onto. It's scary, but you're not quite sure why it's scary, and there's something about it new that is going to offend people, and this is why this film was hated. It was hated on release. It was a new film. Essentially, it was a new type of film, and they just didn't know what to make of it. And that's one of the big. It's the same with Blade Runner. Blade Runner, even though I don't like Blade Runner as much as a thing, it was a very new kind of film. So that's one of the reasons why it was hated. So the film is very new. It was a very different type of film. One of the biggest scares of the film, though, is the ending. The ending, pretty much, it's after all the horror, all these set pieces of paranoia and difficulty, these characters who you don't quite like, but they're very interesting though. In watching them go through this horrible experience where they can't trust each other, and how they have to kind of raise a game amidst all these horrific events. They fight, and they watch their friends get killed repeatedly, and then at the end there's only two of them left, and you're not quite sure whether your hero's the Thing, or he's still human, or is the last other survivor the Thing, or still human. And it's not ambiguous, the ending, so the idea is, the final scare is, did they do anything, or did they not, or what was going to happen next? That's a creepy way to end a film. I mean, that's unusual to start with, but after all of this newness, the film feels very new and very different. For all of this that hits you, I mean, now you know what to expect because you've heard about the Thing and how dark it is. So anyone getting into the Thing now might not get the same effect as you got when it first came out, because when it first came out, there was nothing like it. So all the horror accumulated in ways that could be kind of numbing to you because you're quite sure how to react to it. After all that, you get to an ending where you're not quite sure whether it was worth anything or not, and it's pretty creepy and pretty scary. And I think for the new audiences, this was just a final fuck you to them. You know, So I think that was. Now it's a great ending. Now, I mean, John Carpenter likes his dark endings. He did not believe in having endings where just because you did all this stuff, it doesn't mean you're going to survive or you're going to get what you want. There's always some darkness. Like once things have went along, there's not. He doesn't really coddle you into everything's going to be fine in the end. That's one of the reasons why he had problems in his career later on, because he's dark endings. I mean, nothing's all. Nothing. I can't think about an ending with him that is purely happy. There's always something in his endings, and this one's the biggest ending of. Oh my god, he didn't do that, did he? This is just ambiguity. There's no escape from the horror, and after all the horrors that have come before, this is the final hit. And once I've seen it quite a few times, it's a wonderful ending. When we first see it, it's like, oh my god. It's not like a big shocker at the end of Seven. This is much more like a shocker of, I can't believe there's a wedding there. That's just exhausting, that kind of ending. And that's the film's got. That's part of the really cool scare about it is, it's really wears you down. Any hope you get gets killed pretty early on, and it get repeatedly any hope, any character you think they might be useful, they turn out to be a monster, or they turn out to be useless and they die horribly. No one turns out to be who you think they are, and that's what's wonderful about it. And it's just it's a genuinely nightmare film. Same way Shine's genuinely a nightmare film, because it's got the logic of a nightmare, the way it floats in your head, which is why I think these two films really get under people's skin. There's something going on in them that you can't quite. Like, it's the same with David Lynch films. There's something going on in them you can't quite explain away. There's just something there that means you have to keep watching them, and there's something that's going to fascinate you. So the thing is wonderful, and of course it became a video hit pretty quickly, because people like me who were of the video generation started watching thinking, this is great. Once you get used to the newness of it, I mean, this was the uber film of the 80s for I can't believe they went there. Like, when Blade Runner get hit badly with the reviews, that was just called boring. I mean, they could still place Blade Runner in some sort of context. The thing they couldn't place in any context, it was viewed as like basically pornography for a while, because it was so dark and the effects were so extreme, and they couldn't place what the effects were doing to them. They just thought, I don't want to see this is horrible. And what it actually was this is the nightmare logic of an alien invasion, a real alien invasion, something that's beyond what you can actually contextualise. That's what's scary, that's what's fascinating about it. So it became a hit later, and video generation said this is good, and it built, and slowly it became one of the great horror films. But it wasn't at the time. At the time it was like, I can't believe this. That just shows you like true originality, even though it's viewed as a remake, but it's not really a remake, it's an adaptation of the actual story. That kind of thing, originality, will always flummox people. And that's why this is the first beautiful disaster, because it's a beautiful film, but it's also a disaster on release. I thought this was the perfect one to start with, because it was the epitome of what the show's going to be about these films that were hard to contextualise on release. They just were really hard to get a hang of what this was. But it's a beautiful film. Everyone now knows it's a beautiful film, but it took its time. And I hope you enjoy that. I'll be back with Speed Racer. Next is Speed Racer, completely different from what I've just talked about, but it's another beautiful disaster.